This is the Nourished Brain Podcast, where we explore the art and science of nutrition for brain health and mental well-being. The information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. I'm your host, Sarah Thompson-Fajera. Let's get started. Hey there. Today I'm talking through a recently published study that looked at how two well-known dietary patterns, which are the Mediterranean diet and the MIND diet, M-I-N-D diet, can protect cognitive function, in this case over a time frame of 5 years, and also how genetics may influence how much someone benefits from either of these eating patterns. And this research was published in September 2025. The title is The Long-Term Neuroprotective Effect of MIND and Mediterranean Diet on Patients with Alzheimer's Disease. Let's unpack the details, what they found, and how the results could apply to you or to someone that you care about. A little bit about the diets that were used in this research study. The Mediterranean and MIND diet both come up again and again when we're talking about brain protective eating patterns. And the Mediterranean diet comes from traditional eating patterns in Southern Europe. It's rich in olive oil as the main source of fat, fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, nuts and seeds, fish and seafood several times a week, and limited red meat and sweets. It's often described as a lifestyle diet, just good for the body and the brain overall, anti-inflammatory, rich in antioxidants. You could follow it for years and years and years and years. Now, the MIND diet, short for the Mediterranean-Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay, was designed specifically to protect the brain. It combines elements of the Mediterranean diet and another eating plan known as the DASH diet, which has been studied for blood pressure control. And the combination of the Mediterranean and DASH diets, which is now known as the MIND diet, zeroes in on foods linked to slower cognitive decline. The MIND diet highlights foods to include more of with some specific targets, including green leafy vegetables and other vegetables as well, just separately considered, berries and nuts, beans and whole grains, fish, poultry, olive oil. And then there's foods that are recommended to limit, including butter and cheese, red meat, fried or fast foods, and pastries or sweets. And compared to the Mediterranean diet, the MIND diet specifically calls out berries and leafy greens, which are foods that have been shown to protect memory and cognition over time on their own. This was a 5-year, 60-month-long prospective study design with 1,500 adults, half with Alzheimer's disease and half without. Researchers followed participants' diet adherence and tracked their cognitive health with two standard tools. The first tool was the Mini Mental State Examination, the MMSE. The second was the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, or MoCA. Researchers also measured blood biomarkers related to brain health, as well as inflammatory markers like CRP, IL-6, TNF-alpha. And on top of that, participants were stratified by genetic risk, specifically whether they carried the ApoE4 allele, which is the strongest known genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So built into the study design, those with this ApoE4 allele we're recommended to eat a bit differently based on that genetic risk factor. For example, to consume more omega-3 fatty acids, more antioxidant-rich foods, and higher amounts of polyphenol-rich foods, because E4 carriers seem to be more vulnerable to oxidative stress, to brain inflammation, which can accelerate brain aging. So little bit of extra support by design because of that. Participants without the E4 allele gene variant were, of course, still encouraged to follow the MIND or Mediterranean diets, just without those targeted adjustments upwards. So you may be wondering, what did they find? Over 5 years, adherence to either diet predicted better cognitive performance, but the MIND diet stood out with a bit more benefit. For the MIND diet, each unit increase in adherence score, the more closely the diet was followed, was associated with, for the MMSE, a beta coefficient of positive 0.332, and for the MoCA score, positive 0.31. And for the Mediterranean diet, the effect sizes were smaller, positive 0.11 for MMSE and positive 0.13 for MoCA. Even after adjusting for factors like biological sex and age, education, the MIND diet did still show benefit, 0.25 for MMSE and 0.27 for MoCA in the sensitivity analysis. So the translation, the takeaway, is that over 60 months, participants who consistently followed the MIND diet scored roughly a quarter to a third of a point higher per unit of diet adherence on cognitive tests compared to those with lower adherence. And that may sound modest, but across years, that small edge could represent some degree of slower decline, slower cognitive decline, stronger memory retention, even for those with higher genetic risk. And overall, I think that this study underscores a couple of things. First, that diet quality matters over time. Even within just 5 years, measurable differences in cognition appeared between high and low adherence groups. So imagine 10, 12, 20, 25 years, a lifetime of eating in these ways. And I also think it's really interesting to think about this idea of being able to adjust elements of a brain protective dietary pattern, i.e. the leafy greens, the berries, the olive oil, with the goal of conferring more protection, potentially, on those who are at higher risk. So, of course, always more to learn, always more study to be done. But I hope that this was both interesting and informative to you, and I will include all of the details about the paper in the show notes, so check it out if you'd like. Talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Nourished Brain podcast. If today's episode inspired you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who could use it. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and stay nourished.